What happens when one of Britain's most beloved actors walks onto a daytime talk show expecting a friendly chat and instead finds himself ambushed by a host with an agenda? In just 46 seconds of one shocking comment, the entire interview would spiral into one of the most explosive confrontations ever seen on live television, ending with security being called and a legendary actor storming off the set. Or David Jason sat down on the famous Loose Women panel, expecting to promote his latest project. The veteran actor, known for his warmth and professionalism, had appeared on countless chat shows over his decades-long career, but nothing could have prepared him for what was about to unfold. The panel that day included Denise Welch, Ruth Langsford, Janet Street Porter, and Kay Adams. The studio audience applauded as David took his seat, smiling and waving. The atmosphere seemed light and welcoming at first. Denise Welch opened the conversation with what seemed like a standard question. "David, lovely to have you here. Now, you've been in the industry for so many years. Tell us, do you think older actors like yourself are still relevant in today's modern television landscape?" The audience went quiet. Ruth Langsford shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The question had an edge to it that immediately changed the temperature in the room. David kept his composure, his smile tightening just slightly. "Well, Denise, I think good acting is timeless. Age doesn't determine relevance. Talent does." Denise leaned back in her chair, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. "But surely you must feel a bit out of touch. I mean, the world has moved on quite a bit since your heyday, hasn't it?" Janet Street Porter jumped in, sensing the tension. "Denise, I think what David has achieved speaks for itself. His work has touched generations." But Denise wasn't finished. She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, come on, Janet. We're just having an honest conversation here. David can handle it. Can't you, David?" David's jaw tightened. "I'm not sure what you're getting at, Denise. I came here to talk about my new project, not to defend my entire career," the audience murmured. Some shifted in their seats. Ruth looked at the producers off camera, her expression concerned. The atmosphere had shifted from welcoming to deeply uncomfortable in a matter of seconds. Several audience members exchanged worried glances, sensing that something was going very wrong. David tried to steer the conversation back to safer ground. "As I was saying, the new project is something I'm really excited about. It's a drama that explores..." But Denise cut him off mid-sentence. Yes, the project. But I think what people really want to know is whether you think your style of acting is still what audiences want to see. Things have changed so much, David. Surely you must feel like a fish out of water sometimes." Kay shifted uncomfortably, clearing her throat. "I think David's acting style is exactly what audiences love. That's why he's been successful for so long." Denise waved her hand again, that same dismissive gesture that was becoming increasingly grating. "Kay, to let the man answer for himself. Unless he needs you to defend him?" David's eyes flashed with anger now, though he kept his voice controlled. "I don't need anyone to defend me, Denise. But I also don't appreciate being spoken to as if I'm some relic from a bygone era. I'm still working, still creating, still very much present in this industry." Denise pressed on, her voice taking on a patronizing tone. I'm just saying that perhaps it's time for people of a certain generation to step aside and let fresh voices through. Don't you think you've had your time in the spotlight?" The words landed like a slap. Ruth's hand went to her mouth in shock. Janet's eyes widened in disbelief. The audience let out a collective gasp, and someone in the back row called out, "That's out of order!" David sat perfectly still for a moment, his professionalism the only thing keeping him in his seat. When he spoke, his voice was measured, but there was steel underneath. "I'm sorry, but did you just suggest that I should retire because of my age? Is that really what you're asking me on national television?" Denise didn't back down. In fact, she seemed to double down, leaning forward with a challenging look in her eyes. I'm not saying you should retire. I'm asking if you ever think about whether you're taking opportunities away from younger actors who are trying to break through. Kay Adams tried to intervene. Denise, that's a bit harsh, don't you think? David is a national treasure. Denise rolled her eyes dramatically. National treasure? Really? That's what we call people when they're past their prime, but we're too polite to say it. The studio gasped. David's face had gone red, not from embarrassment, but from restrained anger. His hands gripped the arms of his chair. Denise, David said, his voice measured but firm, I've been nothing but respectful coming on this show. I don't know what points you're trying to make, but this is incredibly rude. Denise laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. Rude? I'm being honest. Something this show is supposed to be about. Or do you want us to just fawn over you like everyone else does? Maybe that's the problem. Maybe you've been told you're wonderful for so long that you can't handle a bit of real talk. Ruth reached over and touched Denise's arm. Denise, maybe we should move on to something else. Denise shrugged Ruth's hand away. No, Ruth. I think this is important. We sit here every day talking about how we need honesty and authenticity, and the moment I'm actually honest, everyone wants me to stop. David stood up slightly in his seat, then sat back down, clearly trying to maintain his composure. Honesty and rudeness are not the same thing. You've crossed a line. Janet spoke up again, her voice sharp. Denise, you're being out of order. David is our guest. Denise turned to Janet with fire in her eyes. Oh, so now I'm out of order for having an opinion? This is exactly what I'm talking about. We're all supposed to bow down and worship at the altar of nostalgia. The audience started to boo. A few people called out in support of David. And the atmosphere in the studio had become electric with tension. David's voice rose for the first time. Nostalgia? I'm still working. I'm still creating. I didn't come here to be insulted by someone who clearly has some sort of chip on their shoulder. Denise's eyes widened mockingly. Oh, there it is. The truth comes out. You can't handle criticism. You're so used to everyone treating you like royalty that the moment someone treats you like a regular person, you fall apart. Ruth reached across the desk toward David, her voice urgent. David, please know that this doesn't represent how we all feel. This is not okay. But David's attention was fixed on Denise now. You call this treating me like a regular person? Denise, if you treated a regular person the way you've treated me today, they'd walk out too. This has nothing to do with who I am or what I've accomplished. This is about basic human decency, which you seem to be sorely lacking. The audience burst into applause, many people rising to their feet. Denise's face flushed red. Whether from embarrassment or anger, it was impossible to tell. Janet's voice was sharp and clear. David's absolutely right. Denise, you've been baiting him from the moment he sat down. This wasn't an interview. This was an interrogation. Kay put her hand up, trying desperately to regain control. Okay, everyone, let's take a breath here. Yeah, this has gotten out of hand. But David had heard enough. He stood up, his mic pack pulling against his shirt. No, Kay, I don't need to take a breath. What I need to do is leave. I've been in this industry for over 50 years, and I have never, ever been treated with such blatant disrespect on a television program. The studio fell into a stunned silence. Even the camera operators seemed to freeze, unsure whether to keep rolling or cut away. The magnitude of what was happening was settling over everyone. A beloved national figure was about to walk off a live television show. Ruth stood up, her voice pleading, almost desperate. David, please don't go. We can fix this. We can move on to other topics. Please. David turned to her, and his expression softened for just a moment. Ruth, you're a lovely person, and I know your heart is in the right place. But I can't stay. I won't subject myself to any more of this. He gestured toward Denise without looking at her. This person has made it clear that I'm not welcome here, and I'm not going to sit here and beg for basic respect. Denise stood up too, facing him across the desk. So you're running away? Can't take the heat? David's voice was steady now, filled with quiet dignity. I'm not running away from anything. I'm choosing not to participate in whatever this is. This isn't a conversation. This isn't an interview. This is you trying to tear someone down for your own entertainment. Ruth stood up, her voice pleading. David, please, we can sort this out. This isn't what we wanted. David turned to Ruth, his expression softening slightly. Ruth, I know this isn't you, but I can't sit here and be spoken to like this. I won't. Denise threw her hands up in theatrical exasperation. Unbelievable. This is exactly the problem with people like you. You demand respect, but you don't give it. You think you're above criticism. David turned back to Denise, his eyes blazing now. Criticism? You call what you've been doing criticism? You haven't asked me a single genuine question. You've done nothing but belittle and mock. That's not criticism. That's cruelty. The audience erupted in applause for David. Several people stood up. The cameras captured it all. The operators unsure whether to keep filming or cut away. Janet stood up, moving toward David. David, you're absolutely right. Denise, you've gone too far. Denise whirled on Janet. Oh, brilliant. Everyone gang up on Denise. What a surprise. Kay's voice was firm now, taking on an authoritative tone. Denise, that's enough. David, I'm so sorry. This should never have happened. But David was already removing his microphone. His hands shook slightly as he unclipped it from his collar. I've been on hundreds of shows, thousands of interviews. I've been asked tough questions. I've been challenged. But I've never been attacked like this. Denise scoffed. Attacked? Oh, please. If you think this is an attack, you really are as fragile as I thought. That was the final straw. David dropped his microphone onto the chair and looked directly into the nearest camera. To anyone watching at home who actually values decency and professionalism, I apologize that you had to witness this. I came here in good faith. He turned to the other panelists, deliberately not looking at Denise. Ruth, Janet, Kay, I have the utmost respect for you, but I cannot stay here another moment. As David moved to leave the set, Denise called after him. That's right. Walk away. Show everyone how professional you really are. David stopped, his back still to her. For a moment, the studio held its breath, waiting to see if he would turn around. But he didn't. He simply said, "Cho," over his shoulder, his voice carrying across the silent studio. Professionalism is knowing when to engage and when to walk away from someone who isn't interested in a real conversation. I'm choosing to walk away. Ruth had tears in her eyes now. David, please. But David continued walking. A producer rushed onto the set, speaking urgently into a headset. Security personnel appeared from the wings, though it was unclear if they were there to escort David or to manage the situation with Denise. Denise sat back down heavily in her chair, her arms crossed. Well, that went well, didn't it? Janet's voice was ice cold. What is wrong with you? That man is a legend, and you just humiliated him on live television for no reason. Denise's defiance didn't waver. I did not humiliate him. He humiliated himself by not being able to handle a simple conversation. Janet stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. A simple conversation? Denise, from your very first question, you were attacking him. You questioned his relevance, his talent, his right to still be working. What part of that is simple conversation? The audience was roaring now, some people shouting their agreement with Janet, others calling out their disgust at Denise's behavior. The noise level in the studio had reached a fever pitch. Kay's face was pale, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the desk. Denise, you need to understand what you've done here. You've just driven away one of the most respected actors in Britain on live television, in front of millions of viewers. Do you have any idea what the fallout from this is going to be? Kay's face was pale. Simple conversation? Denise, you ambushed him. From the very first question, you were antagonistic. This wasn't journalism. This wasn't even entertainment. This was just mean. The audience was still buzzing with shock and anger. Several people were shouting at Denise, though their words were lost in the general commotion. Ruth wiped her eyes. I can't believe this just happened. David Jason is one of the kindest men in the industry. Everyone knows that. And you just... Why would you do that? Denise shrugged, but her bravado was starting to crack. I was trying to have an honest discussion about aging in the entertainment industry. Janet slammed her hand on the desk. No, you weren't. You were trying to make yourself look edgy and controversial by tearing down someone who's achieved more in his career than most people ever will. And it backfired spectacularly. Off camera, voices could be heard arguing. The director was shouting instructions. Producers were running around frantically. Kay looked into the camera, her voice shaking. We need to go to a commercial break. When we come back... Actually, I don't know what we're coming back to. Denise stood up abruptly. You know what? Fine. Everyone blame me. I'm the villain. I'm the bad guy for daring to ask real questions. Ruth's voice was sharp now, her usual warmth completely gone. Real questions? Denise, listen to yourself. You asked if he was still relevant. You told him he was past his prime. You mocked him for being older. Those weren't questions. Those were insults dressed up as questions. The standoff continued, the three other panelists facing Denise across the desk. The audience had gone from shocked to angry, with many people now openly booing whenever Denise spoke. Janet pointed toward where David had exited. That man has brought joy to millions of people. He's worked hard his entire life. He's never had a scandal, never treated people poorly, never let success go to his head. And you decided to use him as a punching bag to make some ridiculous point. Denise's face was flushed now, a mix of anger and perhaps the first hint of shame. I don't have to stand here and be lectured by all of you. Kay's voice was quiet, but firm. Then maybe you should follow David's example and walk off. Because right now, I don't want to share a desk with you. The words hung in the air like a bomb. Even the audience went quiet. Ruth and Janet both looked at Kay in surprise, but neither contradicted her. Denise's mouth opened and closed several times. You can't be serious. Kay didn't blink. I've never been more serious. What you did was indefensible. You embarrassed this show. You embarrassed us. And worst of all, you hurt a good man for absolutely no reason other than your own ego. A producer appeared on set, trying to usher everyone off. Ladies, we need to cut. Now. But the confrontation wasn't over. Denise grabbed her own microphone, sent her voice rising. My ego? This is rich coming from all of you. You sit here every day, passing judgment on everyone else. But the moment someone holds a mirror up, you can't handle it. Janet stood up, her height suddenly seeming imposing. The difference is that we don't ambush our guests. We don't invite people onto this show just to tear them down. David Jason came here as our guest, Denise. Our guest. And you treated him like he was on trial. Ruth was crying openly now. I'm not bothering to hide it. I've worked with David before. He's one of the good ones. And you just... I can't even look at you right now. The producer was becoming more insistent. Ladies, please. We're still live. We need to wrap this up. But Denise wasn't done. Her voice had taken on a desperate quality now, as if she was realizing the magnitude of what had just happened. I was trying to have a real conversation about ageism in the industry. And that's an important topic. Kay's laugh was bitter. Ageism? You were perpetuating ageism. You were suggesting that David should step aside because he's older. How is that fighting ageism? That's enabling it. The audience applauded Kay's words. Someone shouted, "Bring David back." Others took up the cry until it became a chant. Denise looked around at the hostile crowd, her co-panelists who had turned against her, and the chaos she had created. This is insane. I'm being crucified for asking tough questions. Janet's voice cut through the noise. No, Denise, you're being held accountable for being unnecessarily cruel to a man who did nothing to deserve it. There's a difference. The chanting from the audience grew louder. Bring David back! Bring David back! A senior producer finally made it onto the set, a woman in her 50s who clearly had authority. We're cutting to commercial. Everyone off the set. Now, but as the cameras continued to roll, capturing every moment of the fallout, Denise made one last attempt to justify herself. David Jason couldn't handle a strong woman challenging him. That's what this really comes down to. The reaction was immediate and fierce. Ruth stood up so quickly her chair nearly toppled. How dare you? How dare you try to make this about gender? This has nothing to do with you being a woman, and everything to do with you being unnecessarily hostile. Janet nodded vigorously. Absolutely. I'm a strong woman. Ruth is a strong woman. Kay is a strong woman. And none of us would ever treat a guest the way you just did. Don't you dare hide behind feminism to excuse your behavior. The senior producer was physically trying to move people now. Cut the feed. Cut it now. But the technical crew seemed frozen, unable to look away from the drama unfolding. Kay's final words before the producer pulled her away were measured and devastating. Denise, I've defended you before. When people said you were difficult, I stood up for you. When people said you were too outspoken, I said you were just honest. But today, you showed me that maybe those people were right all along. Because there's a difference between being honest and being cruel. And you crossed that line so far that you can't even see it anymore. The audience erupted again. Some were standing and applauding. Others were still chanting for David to return. A few were shouting directly at Denise, their words lost in the general chaos. Denise stood alone at the desk now, the other three panelists having moved away. For the first time, her defiant expression cracked. Her eyes glistened with what might have been tears or might have been anger. Fine. You all want me to be the villain? I'll be the villain. She grabbed her handbag from under the desk and started to walk off the set in the opposite direction David had gone. But before she disappeared into the wings, she turned back one more time, her voice carrying across the studio. History will prove me right. You'll see, Janet called after her, her voice dripping with disdain. History will remember you as the woman who drove David Jason off a television set. That's your legacy from today. As Denise finally left the set, the senior producer addressed the remaining panelists and the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing technical difficulties. We'll be right back. But everyone knew it was much more than technical difficulties. It was a complete meltdown, broadcast live for everyone to see. Ruth collapsed back into her chair, her face in her hands. I can't believe that just happened. I just can't believe it. Kay put her arm around Ruth's shoulders. None of us can, but it did, and we all witnessed it. Janet was pacing back and forth, her anger still palpable. That poor man, he came here expecting a normal interview, and instead he got that. He must be so upset. Off camera, voices could be heard discussing damage control, apologies, and potential consequences. The audience was still buzzing with conversation, everyone trying to process what they had just witnessed. One of the producers approached the remaining panelists. We need to figure out how to proceed. We still have half a show left. Ruth looked up, her mascara smudged. I can't go back out there and pretend everything's fine. Not after that. Kay agreed. We need to address this properly. We owe the audience an explanation. We owe David an apology. Janet was nodding. Absolutely. We can't just sweep this under the rug and move on to the next segment like nothing happened. The producer looked overwhelmed. Let me talk to the executives. Just stay here. As the producer hurried away, the three women sat in silence for a moment, the magnitude of what had transpired settling over them. Ruth finally spoke, her voice small. Do you think he'll ever come back? To any show? Janet's response was immediate. Would you? After being treated like that on live television? Kay shook her head slowly. We've lost any goodwill we had with him, and frankly, we deserve to lose it. We should have shut Denise down sooner. Ruth's voice broke. I tried. I really tried. But she just wouldn't stop. Janet reached over and squeezed Ruth's hand. We all tried. But Denise was determined to... I don't even know what she was trying to achieve. Prove she's tough? Show she's not afraid to challenge people? All she proved is that she doesn't know the difference between challenging someone and bullying them. The studio audience was being addressed by a floor manager, asking them to remain patient while they sorted out the situation. Some people were getting up to leave, clearly disgusted by what they had witnessed. A makeup artist approached the three panelists, offering to touch up their makeup, but Ruth waved her away. What's the point? I don't even know if we're continuing. Kay looked at the empty chair where Denise had been sitting. She's going to face serious consequences for this. She has to. Janet's voice was grim. She should, but you know how these things go. She'll probably claim she was misunderstood or taken out of context. She'll play the victim. Ruth wiped her eyes again. But it was all on camera. Every word, every nasty comment. There's no spinning this. The senior producer returned, looking exhausted. Okay, here's what's going to happen. We're going to come back from commercial, and you three are going to address what just happened. Be honest, be sincere, and apologize on behalf of the show. Then, we're going to end the episode early. We can't continue as normal after this. All three women nodded in agreement. Kay spoke for all of them. We want to apologize, not just as representatives of the show, but as individuals. What happened today was wrong. The producer gave them a weak smile. I know, and for what it's worth, you three handled it as best you could. Denise will have to answer for her actions. As they prepared to go back on air, Janet voiced what they were all thinking. I just hope David knows that not all of us feel the way Denise does. I hope he knows we respect him and we're horrified by what happened. Ruth nodded tearfully. We need to make sure he knows that. Somehow. The floor manager counted them down. Going live in 5, 4, 3. The cameras came back on, focusing on the three remaining panelists and the conspicuously empty chair where Denise had sat. Kay took a deep breath and looked directly into the camera. Welcome back. As you can see, we're down a panelist, and we owe you all, but especially David Jason, a profound apology. Ruth's voice was thick with emotion. What happened today should never have happened. David Jason is a legend, a gentleman, and a talented actor who deserved so much better than what he received on this show. Janet's tone was fierce and protective. The way he was treated was unacceptable. The questions were disrespectful. The tone was hostile, and the entire interaction was designed to make him uncomfortable. That's not what this show is supposed to be about, Kay continued, her voice steady despite the obvious emotion behind her words. We want David to know that the comments made today do not reflect the views of this panel, this show, or this network. We have nothing but the utmost respect and admiration for him and his incredible body of work. The audience applauded, many people nodding in agreement with the sentiments being expressed. Ruth looked down at her hands, then back up at the camera. We also want to apologize to all of you watching at home. You tune into this show for honest conversation, not for ambushes or hostility. We let you down today, Janet added, her voice firm, and we let David down, a man who has given so much to British television, who has brought joy to millions, deserve to be honored, not attacked. Kay made the final announcement. We're going to end today's show here. This isn't the time for cooking segments or fashion tips. This is a time for reflection and accountability. Thank you for watching, and again, our sincerest apologies. The cameras faded to black, and the studio lights dimmed. The three women sat in the semi-darkness, emotionally drained from the ordeal. Ruth was the first to speak. Do you think it was enough? The apology? Janet shrugged helplessly. I don't know. Nothing can undo what happened, but at least we tried. Kay stood up slowly, removing her microphone for the final time that day. The real apology needs to come from Denise, but somehow, I don't think that's going to happen. As they gathered their belongings and prepared to leave the set, each of them knew that this day would be remembered for years to come. Not for any planned segment or scheduled guest, but for one of the most uncomfortable and explosive confrontations in daytime television history. The empty chair where David Jason had sat seemed to loom large in the studio, a stark reminder of what had been lost when a respected guest had been driven away by unnecessary hostility and disrespect. And somewhere in the building, David Jason was likely already gone, having left behind a show that had spectacularly failed to show him the basic courtesy and respect he deserved.